Hi, I'm Stacy.
And I am Mark, and this is the Gurus and Game Changers podcast. Okay, before I introduce our guest on this show, I want to describe her for our audience in a collection of words, because I've known our guest for a little bit, so I feel I have an authority that I could speak from. She is, well, let's talk about what she is and what she does, right? She is a public speaker, a keynote speaker. She is a coach. She is a consultant. She is somebody who works with others to help them with their leadership presence, to help them communicate authentically, which is beautiful because I have not known many more people who communicate authentically than our guest here today. And on the personal side, obviously very intelligent, very articulate, very kind, and leads from a place of service. So you don't meet many people who, when they go into an interaction with other people, that they come to it from a place of service. And our guest has always done that in every interaction that I've had with her, in new interactions, and other people that I know have had conversations with her. And then all of that and more is grounded in, and kindness, let's throw that in there if I didn't, all of that is grounded in a faith, and not that you lead with a faith, but it powers your power, right?
Wow.
You lean into that to give you your superpower and your ability to connect with people. That, and she has a beautiful smile, which you should be seeing soon. That is our guest, Nancy Hicks. How did I do? Did I do okay?
I'm humbled. That's the
And she's
truth.
humble.
I'm like, no, I mean it.
all.
I love you for that, and I'm grateful. And if I could live up to that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to be here with both of you and to meet you,
Yes,
Stacy.
nice to meet you
This is
too,
great,
Nancy.
Yeah, thanks.
So tell us about you.
About me. Well, I'm from Canada originally, from Toronto. Born, raised, graduated from the University of Toronto. And I am a wife of almost 33 years to my incredible husband, Cam. And mother to two sons, David and Aaron. And now a mother-in-law. And now I have an 8-month-old
Wow, no.
little grandbaby, which grandbaby. Yeah, that's like, who? I was really, really young when I got married. But anyway, I've been in professional communication my whole life. That was that's been my vocation and avocation for truly forever. So started as a singer back in Toronto, and classical music was my thing, and gospel music. I grew up in the church. And so had a voice studio of like 30 voice students of all ages. And so I was singing, swung into musical theater, and just loved the stage, main stage theater in Toronto. Then we moved to the U.S. with my husband's career, and I moved into QVC. That's a story in and of itself, and that was a tremendous experience for me. But it was a right turn in terms, because my whole life had been music, singing. And then I went into television with QVC, always a leader in the church. But during that time at QVC, I got my master's in theology when our younger son was heading off to university. And my communication, because I'd been a leader in the church teaching and speaking at conferences and doing things like this forever, just helping people walk with God in a real way, not in sort of this sort of lofty,
Ephemeral,
and irrelevant way.
Okay.
But in a way that was genuine and real and relevant. So when I got my master's in theology, I stayed with QVC for another couple of years, hoping to be bivocational. But my traveling around the world was just taking up too much of my calendar. So I did in fact leave 5 years ago to start my ministry, Nancy Hicks Live. So I'm now speaking. That's what I mostly do. And media, lots of media. Written a book and numbers of op-eds and things like that. But so that's what that's who I am. That's what I do. And actually, I'm just back on air with QVC. We were talking about that just before we said go for this interview, but doing the faith category. So that's another part of media that I really enjoy, and I can kind of push out, positive, powerful messages in another dimension to the ministry, Nancy Hicks Live.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
It's and I like red lipstick, actually. That's another thing about me. But in the summer, I like to wear coral as opposed to ruby red. The bold red lip is a thing. It's a thing.
It's nice to slide that right in there.
Yeah,
red
well,
lip.
why not?
So, do you have a question, Mark? Because I was going to ask.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, did you have a particular were you called to the ministry, like, or was
question.
it,
Yeah.
or did you just
Big aha moment.
decide? Like, was there what was it? If so?
100% calling.
And you knew that was from God.
I believed
Yeah.
by faith it was from
Yeah.
God. I've heard, there have been times I've journaled certain words I've heard or whatever. Do I think I hear God perfectly? Absolutely not.
Right.
A lot of people do a lot of stupid things saying, God told me to do this, and they burn down, abortion clinics and things like that. I
Right.
don't think that's from God. So I hold it very humbly when I say I think, as
Yeah.
far as I can hear God, I sensed God.
Either
in
way,
that
you were
moment.
inspired.
I was definitely inspired.
Right.
And I went to seminary and got my master's in theology to start Nancy Hicks Live, this ministry.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I love to, I don't know if you're going, Mark, but I also love to reel it back and talk about
Sure.
your childhood. So
Oh.
was there a lot of religion in your childhood? What was it about your childhood that put you on this path? Like,
Well, I have a great story there too. So let me tell you, I grew up I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and my mom was the one who raised us. And very briefly, my mother was not a Christian. My father was, so he said. And he was,
So he said.
So he said. You know a lot of those kind of people, right? They talk a good talk.
Right.
My father was abusive in every way and a real womanizer. And he used religion, as many do, in a very destructive, abusive way.
wow.
Right.
Pretty
so
common, right?
it's just the truth.
Yeah.
So my father was that way, but here's the one good thing my dad did do. He said, I want to take the kids to church. I've never been to church. I was 18 months old. And I'm the youngest of 3 girls. My mom said, go ahead and take them to church, but don't bring that crap home to me.
Sounds like my mom.
My mother was a party girl. She was beautiful and vivacious, full of vitality. And she said, you can take the kids, but don't bring it home to me. So the very first day, now this is part of the story, my mother was worried that I actually was a little bit slow because I hadn't uttered a word. I was 18 months old other than no. So I was nonverbal, and she thought I was a little bit slow. Now, the day I went to church and came home from church for the very first time, and this was my mother's story. She died at 80. This was my mother's story to me and to others all her life. The day I came home at 18 months, I came home not just speaking, but singing about Jesus.
Wow.
Lit up like a Christmas tree. And my mom was like, what has happened? What has gotten into my little girl? Honestly, my mom was like, what the heck has happened to this child?
How about your sisters? Did they stick with?
They did, both of them. Both of them were very, I'm close to my one sister, Deborah, who's a year older than me. She's back in Toronto. And then my older sister, Karen, is 11 years older. And she stayed in the faith as well. But we're a little bit estranged, sadly. You know, she has a lot of, absolutely. And she has a lot of things she's working out. And I love her. I'm at the ready anytime. But, family.
Family.
Is,
Family,
kind of strange and hard sometimes. So that's our faith background. That's our story.
Awesome.
Yeah, raised in the Salvation Army, love that denomination.
So the Salvation Army is a church?
It is primarily
In Canada?
in all around the world.
Wow, I didn't even realize it was the church.
You know what? When we moved to the U.S., Stacey,
sorry.
Don't be. When we moved to the U.S., actually, people in the U.S. Know mostly of the Salvation Army, know the kettles at Christmas
Yes.
time, the money goes to the poor, and know it mostly as a social service.
Right.
Because
Did
that
you
is
know that?
a
Mark?
lot of people.
Yeah.
I've been
didn't.
trying
never
to
knew.
process this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I
Yes.
always thought it was a social service.
Yes,
Right.
100%.
Well, it really does do a beautiful job of that in the U.S. and internationally. But it started in 1865. I won't give you too much of a history, but in 1865, William and Catherine Booth co-founded the Salvation Army because the church, they were actually Methodist, and the church was getting a little too exclusive. And they were like, this is not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is for all people. And so they were like, we're out of the doors of the church, and we're going to take soup, soap, and salvation to the people in the gutter of London, England. So they took them out of these people, they took them out of the gutters of East London, and they gave them soup, they fed them. Soap, they gave them their dignity by cleaning them up again.
Wow.
And then they gave them the good news of God's love to the world through Jesus Christ.
Right.
So it was a very holistic approach to I don't even like to say religion, to introducing them to God.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the foundation of the Salvation Army.
Cool.
True story.
Sorry I interrupted. Do you remember where you were?
No, it's not an interruption.
I don't remember what the story was that you were doing when I...
No, is that's our heritage.
What is the purpose, as you define it, of your ministry?
Ooh, thank you for asking. The purpose of my ministry is primarily to women, though I do teach and speak to men as well, but primarily women. And initially, 7 years ago when I started the ministry, Nancy Hicks Live, it was to raise up female leaders around the world. So I was traveling to India and Albania and Haiti, and what I am seeing when I was in seminary in the missiology book, so missions around the world, is that the good news of God's love to the world through Jesus is burgeoning like never before in history in places like Asia, Africa, South America. But you would both probably know that the church is in radical decline in North America for lots of reasons. We can talk about those if you want. So my whole thing was, and in those parts of the world where the good news is really burgeoning, the women work tirelessly, as the men do, and I don't ever want to take anything away from the men. However, the women are working just as hard as the men, but they still are very much underserved when it comes to leadership development and biblical teaching. So for me, when I started the ministry, I thought, send me to these nations and let me do what I do best and raise up female leaders, as I have done for years here in the U.S. and in Canada. And let me get to these nations and really support these women around the world. In the last couple of years since COVID and since a tragedy in my life that my son David, our older son, died, that's a story, of course, we've gotten very focused, and we've also been really watching all of the data around the decline of the church in North America, and we've gotten even more focused. So actually, Mark, our mission has changed. I still want to raise up women, but in particular, our focus is on women who, because we're watching that demographic, leave the church like never before in history also, and our focus is really women internationally, but I'm watching North America, who are wrestling with the conflicting voices in the church today.
So let's talk about the secularization of America.
Anything you want to, yeah.
So you're probably sitting next to two more secular people than you are someone who's about to have their own mission, like yourself.
And by secular, do you mean what? Just
agnostic, I
Yes.
guess, is probably the best way to put it.
yeah.
Yep.
You know, sixth grade was the end of my Catholic schooling.
Yeah.
I often refer to myself as a recovering Catholic.
Yeah.
But I was still attending church as an adult on my own
Yeah.
when I did not live home. So it was, it was part of my life for a long time. But as you said, society is moving away from that.
Yeah.
So when you are in ministry,
Yeah.
what's your message? Two questions.
Yes.
What is your message as it relates to your ministry to to a secular audience?
Yes.
And then as you move to a more secular message with the coaching and development and
Yes.
that there's a silo of that has nothing to do with ministry, I assume.
True.
Right. So
Yeah.
how does that fit with your ministry?
Yes. Okay. So part A, part B, part A.
Yeah.
So how do I address people who, like you, have been burned by the church, or maybe you just grew up and it was like, this doesn't play a part in my life. I don't see the relevance. I keep using that word relevance. When I teach the Bible, whether it's in person or in my online courses, I like to say, here's what the text says. And I like to say, now, here's what it meant to the original audience as best we can tell. And here's what it meant in the original language as best we can tell. And now we need to drag it to today. How does this fit in this context today for us? How do we live this out? So I'm very much about, let's be real, let's be honest, let's be relevant. Otherwise, it's dead. It's dead. And you may as well chuck it. My whole thing is, one of my messages to people who have been burned by the church, who have felt like this is a snore and a half, or this is ridiculous, there's been more harm done by organized religion or people who pontificate about being Christians than there has been good, I say to those people, I am so unbelievably sorry. You're right. In a lot of things you pick up on or you feel or you've experienced, and that's true and real for you. So that's the first thing I like to lead with is just, me too. I've been hurt too, and I'm really, really sorry. You want to say something about that, or?
No, I was going to ask you the second half.
Yes. How do I
Moving on to the
address?
secular side? What's the messaging?
Well, the messaging. So are you talking about when I'm speaking to, say, for example, when I do corporate communication consulting, that kind of stuff?
It's a great example.
Yeah. For me, I love people, Mark.
Yeah.
Like no matter what you believe, every single person, according to the scripture, as I have seen it and have learned and interpreted it, every single person is loved by God, the God of the Bible. Every person has what's called the imago Dei, or the image of God in and on them. Every person. So I don't care what you think about them. I don't care what I'm not saying you, but one thinks of them, one judges, whatever you think, anybody, kings or janitors, I don't care what you see or what you think you see. That person is an image bearer, and they deserve dignity and love.
And I think that's the problem. There's a hypocrisy. For the secular world, we see hypocrisy.
Of course.
I've often said, the hand that extends to you and show each other a sign of peace is the same hand that gives you a finger in the parking lot.
That's right.
If you drive past them, right?
Yeah.
So there is that hypocrisy that has driven many people away over the years.
Yes. And there's a difference between hypocrisy and just flat out sin.
Right.
Like, I'm not perfect, right? Like, you're going to see me. I mean, I've been grieving the last couple of years. You should hear some of the stuff that's come out of my mouth. Not proud of it, but it's in there and it's coming out sometimes. Yeah. And some of that is grief, and some of it is just flat out, geez, Nancy, there's some junk in there that's coming out right now. That's called sin, or, missing the mark, or just my flesh just, railing at the death of my son. Yeah. Then there's hypocrisy, which is, here's the Nancy Hicks that goes to church on Sunday and pretends she loves everybody.
Precisely.
Right?
Yes.
And then I'm living a double life. We've heard about these Christian leaders who are doing the opposite of what they espouse from the platform. That's called hypocrisy. Yeah. You have a double life you're living.
So this is what I love about this podcast. So you become a guru, you become a game changer. Either you're born that way, it's in your nature, or it's as a result of your background or your experience.
Or someone mentors you or something.
Yeah.
You learn. Or it can be fueled by something ethereal, like a belief, a belief structure, or a faith in something. But it's tested. You were just referencing that, right? It's tested. You don't fully understand your faith until it's actually been tested. You can believe anything you want, but until it's tested and you have all these reasons to it's shaken, and all these reasons to cast it aside.
Yes, Mark.
Right?
You bet.
And not just faith, but just belief in something.
Yeah.
Right? Once it's tested and you get through that, you have the grit and the mindset to get through it, or the faith, then you know it's real. So to the extent that you're comfortable, talk to us about how it was tested with your son.
Recently. Okay, so I'll tell you what happened, first of all. So we have two sons. Our older son, David, is the one we're discussing right now. Both boys are amazing. Our older son, David, was an incredible go-getter. And like his mom, actually, very vital, optimistic go-getter. He had studied at Oxford University in his undergrad. He did a triple major. Oxford was 1 year. He had done a triple major, actually, in his undergrad, thinking he was going to go into law school eventually. Moved to China, spoke fluent Mandarin, was published in the Boston Globe and Washington Post. His writing was incredible. He was an amazing cook, creative, gorgeous, humble, loved to work with poor, and then lived in Shanghai for 2.5 years, working for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, doing research and writing. David came back to the U.S. to go to graduate school and was doing a double major in public policy and law at Harvard.
Jeez.
Like, brilliant, phenomenal son. At age 26, while in grad school, he went for what he thought was going to be an uneventful colonoscopy, and they found a tumor in his colon. At age 26, Stacy.
But you don't do uneventful colonoscopies at 26.
Why did he do that?
Yes.
Because there was blood in his stool.
Okay.
And he was told it's probably nothing.
Nothing. Hemorrhoids.
Right?
That's what I've heard.
It's nothing. Exactly. So, but it wasn't nothing. There was a tumor. He was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at age 26.
26, and it's aggressive when kids are young.
Aggressive. And so, but we were told that day, because this was up in Boston, David was in Cambridge going to school. So my husband Cam and I rushed up, and we were told, don't worry about it. We have so many options at our disposal. The oncologist literally said, David, I will die before you do. We'll get it.
Ugh.
But 2 years later,
That's the last time he said that.
Unreal. It was pretty arrogant. I mean, I guess I understand giving people hope, but so after scans, surgeries, chemotherapy, alternative therapies in a windowless room at Penn, because COVID had happened, Cambridge became a ghost town. Harvard was the first university to close down, in fact, with COVID. David came home, hadn't lived at home for 9 years, and now was at home with us for the last year of his life. And in a windowless room in 2021, David and my husband Cam were sitting there, and he was about to do his final round of chemotherapy. And David said, none of this is working. What's our plan B? And the oncologist said to David, David, there is no plan B. It's hospice. And so David was put on hospice, and after 6 weeks, on May 1st, we watched our unbelievable son with his whole life ahead of him die. And let me tell you, when it comes to walking with God, I help people walk with God. I love to serve people, as you mentioned. I love to watch people come alive in their faith. Like, not just like trudge through life. I have a book called Meant to Live, Living in Light of the Good News. When that happened to our son David, I was utterly, I'm going to use the word destroyed. My heart was destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I don't mean it's gone forever. I mean like shredded, is being currently rebuilt. But I am here to say the grief journey has been real for me. Totally real. And I have faced it and done the hard work in the last 2 years. And it's my relationship with God, it's very different right now.
Stronger?
And I'll answer any questions. Depends on how you define strong. I think one of the things I say about people when they've gone through hard things, and let's face it, everyone has gone through and will go through hard things. You both have. And certainly COVID has revealed all kinds of things about what this world is and how quickly, we can go from hero to zero. We used to say that at QVC, right? You can go from hero to zero in a second. This life is going quickly. And things can hit you right out of the blue. And my relationship with God has always been very, very strong. I've never walked away from God. I've always loved God, served God, loved people. And I believe that I think your relationship with God gets stronger as you engage in what's genuinely going on in your heart and in your soul and in your mind. I think you must ask the tough questions. If your mind, I know what you're like. You've got this mind that asks great questions. I think you have to. David, we said to our sons, David, and to Aaron, this is the faith of your family. This is the faith of your community. God put you in this family and community. But it's your job to kick the tires of this faith. It's your job to shake the trees and ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid. If God is who God says God is, he will stand. Truth will stand. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. So in my grieving, I have asked the hard questions. I have yelled. I have wailed. I have said to God, you are not the protector I thought you were. What kind of a father? I mean, the kinds of things you grow up believing, right? God will protect us. This is a truism in the Bible. Well, what do you then do? How do you reconcile watching your son be devoured by cancer? What kind of protection is that? You have to now grapple with these kinds of theological issues. And I believe the only way to really find God is to continue to turn to truth, to continue to grapple. Is this true or is it not? I'm not afraid. Because God says I am truth.
But did you have a moment where you're going through the horror
Yeah.
of all of this?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was blame you're blaming God, you're blaming
the devil,
anyone,
the world.
right?
Yeah, we don't take care of the planet. Yeah.
Do you get to it? Did you get to a point where you were just like, okay, and not that I'm done grieving, but okay, I'm going to try to come back?
Okay, great question. I will say from the very onset, as I would walk around my house, I'm an extrovert big time, but I was alone a lot. I had to be. A lot of crying, a lot of grappling. Right from the beginning, I said to God, I am furious at you. And not only furious, I had rage. Like I wanted to go through my house and tear down every drape and smash every window. And I did that before God as almost an act. This sounds weird, right? Almost an act of worship, which sounds ridiculous. But I'm like, you have all of my heart, not just the happy stuff, not just the, I got this, but you have the worst of me. I actually believe the extent to which you enter into your pain and your sorrow and your grief is the extent to which genuine life is released. They're equal in measure. I think the more you engage in the hard stuff of life, really engage in it, it's like a pendulum that swings, the extent to which genuine life will be released in you. Because God resurrects dead things. It's what God does best. My relationship with God is based on what is genuine about me. I don't have to be afraid to like conceal these parts. God knows if he is who he says he is, if God is who God says God is. So I was just trying to be real and really enter into the pain and enter into my relationship as real as I could be with God and say everything that was in me without being blasphemous, right? I don't want to be disrespectful. But from the very get-go, Mark, I was like, and I will still follow you. And I will still bow my knee. And I will still worship you. My heart isn't there, but I am not turning away and turning back. But I am furious at you. And I'm in that place, by the way, I'm not through grief.
Mindset, huh?
2 years later.
No, 10 years minimum.
Right? I'm still like
Minimum.
I still go to bed crying and saying, how could you, Abba? How could you? I am so hurt by you, and yet I will still
Who's Abba?
fall. Abba is the word daddy. And Abba is what
In what language?
that's Hebrew.
That's Hebrew.
Abba,
Okay.
daddy.
Abba.
And I called God Abba, daddy.
Okay.
Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how close I am. Like it's intimate.
Wow.
It's not like some God.
No.
out there.
This
It's
is,
here.
Very
It's
genuine.
here.
This is genuine and eternal.
is.
Yeah.
And genuine.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, we talk a lot on this podcast about obstacles and overcoming obstacles, and I don't want to diminish what you've gone through by calling it an obstacle. Believe me, and it's or setback or whatever, because it's obviously the most horrible thing. I think we all would agree with it. Anybody could ever
unthinkable.
go through, right?
Completely unthinkable.
Just imagining it puts me in a very dark place. I
Yeah.
can't imagine living it and having to go through it. But coming out of it,
Yes.
and I know you're still on that journey.
Yes.
You said that very clearly.
Yeah.
I just keep asking how. How?
Yeah.
How do you come out of that? Because people will say, "Oh, I've had this in my life. I've had that in my life." And we had a gentleman who was incarcerated for 8 years. I think it was.
Nine.
Like that's a terrible
Yeah.
thing to go through.
Wow.
To come out better.
Yes.
Than that, right now, but it still doesn't.
This is
compare,
next level. Yeah.
right? How?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say a few practical things.
Yeah.
Number one is I was in grief counseling for 14 months every week.
Yeah.
So I did not like this whole. My son David, in fact, said it beautifully when he's. So there are these podcasts also that Harvard Law School did. They did 2 on David, the Dandelions podcast, and they're actually. I post them on my social media platforms on Nancy Hicks Live. But he said, we all talk about wanting, to live our best lives, to be our best selves. We all talk about that. We talk a good talk about that. And it's like, okay, here's this hard thing. Positivity is not going to work out. It's not going to get you through
enough.
that.
Yeah.
It's just not going to cut it. So it's like, okay, so here's this hard thing. What are you going to do? What's your move? David's words. What's your move? Or are you just going to talk? And I will say, I think what has gotten me through, and again, I'm not through, but what has brought me this far is I think just engaging it. And I think overall remembering, because I have steeped myself in the Bible and in prayer and in God's love for me all my life, I don't know where else to go. Jesus said, in this world you will have a lot of trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So he always did warn. A lot of Christians are like, they always want to say, Jesus said, I've overcome the world. I'm like, be careful. Don't forget the first part. In this world, you will have trouble. Don't quickly get past that. So don't be surprised when these things happen. Don't be surprised. Though they will rip your heart to shreds, don't be surprised. Jesus did, in fact, warn us.
Yeah.
So you can't escape that.
Yeah. So my dad, I told you earlier that my dad passed away in 2010. Yeah, and it was horrible, tragic. He was my person. I loved him so much. But I always felt like and I'm not religious. I grew up with an atheist mother, and my dad was agnostic my whole life. But then at the end, he all of a sudden wanted to become Catholic, and that was before he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And he was at Brigham and Women's.
I'm so sorry. Up in Boston as well.
Yeah, he was up in Boston. Well, he's from the Boston area, so. But I've never been religious, but I always felt like, you say the word God, and I say the universe, right? Yes. I kind of. That's probably not okay coming from your perspective, because there's this entity, God, which I could have never really comprehended that there's a person-ish or something. But I'm very spiritual, right? And I believe in karma, and I believe in doing the right thing just as my nature. And when I was a child, my mother not only just didn't like religion, like she
hated it.
Still hates it. Doesn't even like to drive by a church. Thinks it's money and it's cultural and it's control and it's politics, and vehemently. I'm not politics. I am not. I'm not of that ilk. No. But my father was agnostic. So when I was young, my mom's like, well, what I'll let you do is just go to church with people, which is cool. Like if you feel like it. So I did travel, and I went to many churches and experienced a lot of things. But anyway, when my father died, I just felt like he was there at certain times. Like, do you
beyond? You mean when he passed?
Like something would happen, or something would be said, or I would say something, or I would go out on the deck and I would talk to him, my dad, because he was my guy. You know what I mean? I'm like, Dad, you got to help me with this thing, and I would pretend he was really there. But at times I did feel like he actually was, and I felt like he actually spoke to me, my dad.
Beautiful.
But I was wondering, did you ever feel that way with David? Like, would you ever allow yourself to think, or do you at this time believe that he's there?
When, according to Scripture, when someone passes away, dies, and I actually have a keynote talk that is, about the inevitable portal to life, which is death. No one escapes death, and so we die, and then, according to Scripture, we rise again. Right? So, and that is made possible, Christians believe, by the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So he went before us, he absorbed the sin of humankind so that we would not have to have this barrier, missing the mark, our imperfection. We couldn't live the perfect life, so Jesus lived it for us and paid the debt that I should have paid, all right? Because I'm a brat, and I can be, rude, and I can, all the stuff, things I do, things I don't do. So he absorbed all of my junk and paid the price for me. That's what Christians believe. So when we move through this death, right, this portal into the fullness of life beyond this material world, I believe, according to Scripture, that those people are now alive. In fact, the Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord because of what Jesus did. It also talks about the great cloud of witnesses, those who have gone before us thousands of years, people who are cheering us on. Keep going. Keep
in
going.
This life.
Us in this life, in the physical world, that there is this great cloud of witnesses that are helping us persevere through this,
and they're alive, and they're
alive, and they're helping. They do not become angels. That's a separate species.
Okay,
angels and people, different species.
So much to this.
I know. This could be a 4-hour podcast, by the way.
No,
this is fantastic.
Too heady, though. I don't want to get too heady.
Yeah.
No,
but just to say, people are people, and they become more alive because of Christ. Because of the work that Jesus did, life, death, and resurrection, according to Christians and the Scripture, that they become more alive than they were here. I believe that David is more alive now than he was when he was here in the physical world. But it still ticks me off because I don't get to hug him, right? He's still. Do
Right.
I believe that? In fact, it is said. The grief counselor was very clear with me, Nancy. Literally, a part of you has died. When our loved ones die, when you're a mother, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. This is my baby. I will never touch him or hear his voice in a fresh way.
I cannot even
Again.
I can't imagine.
It's riveting.
Yeah.
So literally a part of me has died with the death of my son David. And I don't like people jumping to, but he's in heaven, he's in a better place. I'm like, shut up. Would you like to go there now too? Do you like your child to go there now if it's such a better place? Like, we live in the here and now.
And that, just to piggyback on that, when I worked for a nonprofit called Family Lives On Foundation, we were taught that it's for kids whose parents had died, and instead of always grieving, we came up with a tradition to carry on that joy. So I was with them for a while, but in our grief training, they said never tell a child that their mother or father is in a better place,
Right.
because the first thing they'll say is, "Well,
Why can't I
What's
go
wrong
there?
with here?
I want to go there too.
Oh, I want to go there too.
I want to go there too. It's a better place. Like, why can't I go with mommy in the better place or with daddy in the better
Absolutely.
place?" You're supposed to say, your mother or father has died. They are dead.
That's right.
That's the facts.
Right. They have died.
Yes.
They have died. And I do make the distinction, they have died versus they are dead.
Yes.
Tell us what the
The
distinction.
distinction, again, and I'm coming from a Judeo-Christian worldview and a biblical worldview, which, again, we breathe our last, and again, there's different theology around this, but because of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we breathe our last, we move through this portal of death into the fullness of life.
So they have died here.
They've died here,
But
But they're now
in the
alive
physical world.
in this
And by
other.
right?
Is it
in this
heaven?
other
Is it called?
realm.
Is it heaven?
Heaven. Yeah, heaven. I mean, I say heaven. Right. And so, I mean, the universe is pretty huge, right? Like, it's pretty darn huge. Like, Earth is just this little, and in the fullness of time, in terms of eternity, my son David said, I love to quote him, you know, whether I live 8 years, 98 years, it's a blip on a screen in terms of eternity. Like, if
Okay.
you live 108 years, David lived 28 years, a little one lives 8 months or 8 days, it's still nothing in terms of the fullness of eternity.
Did he seem peaceful about the fact that he was going to die at such a young age?
He did.
Because he believed and
Well, and he'd wrestled it through and came to believe through people who were smarter than him and really wrestled it to the ground. And then at the other end was like, I do believe, I will follow right to the end. He was not Pollyanna about it, I'll tell you. But he said to me, I remember up in the hospital in Boston, after the first surgery, I was in bed with him. I'd stayed overnight at the hospital, and I got into his hospital bed to massage his back. And he said to me, Mom, I want you to know, if this doesn't go well for me, I want you to know that I have loved my life. Are you okay? I have loved my life so much. I love you and Dad and Aaron. Like, I love you guys so much. And I've loved my life. And I think I've lived more life than most 98-year-olds. I think I've lived more life, and he really did. Like, he just lived. And I'm all about that. And he was too. And so when it was time, when he had been put on hospice, he made a list of things he and his brother and we would do as a family. And we walked him, and he walked with such grace right to the very end, till we watched him breathe his last, which was on an airplane coming home from a family trip that we'd taken together from San Diego. And he walked it with grace and kindness and love right to the end.
what do you mean? Like, you were on an airplane when he died?
We were. So one of the things he wanted to do was have a final family vacation with us. And so we booked a trip, because we couldn't leave the country because of COVID. We booked a trip to San Diego. And we went on a plane, and he was on hospice, and they told us it's fine to take him. It'll be hard, but do it. He'll love it. So we did take him out to San Diego. He picked an amazing, resort. He had friends out there. And while he was there, we were only there for 3 days. We were booked in for a week. But while he was there, the hospice nurse was there helping us. Penn Medicine had someone there for us and said, this young man is not going to make it home. And so
Incredible.
we cut our trip short. And my husband works for a fantastic medical device company, and they sent the corporate jet to pick us up. And we flew home, the 5 of us, so David, and I was sitting right beside him, and my husband and our daughter-in-law Rachel and our son Aaron, the 5 of us, and then the 2 pilots were in that plane. And we were an hour and a half away from home, and David passed away right there on the plane. And we were all standing witnessing it. But he had been nothing but kind to people as we went through the airport on the way to the trip. The people that helped us at the hotel, he was kind to everyone.
So your family was all there with him.
We were all there with him, and he was full of grace to the very end and love.
Did you need to do
love.
like last rites or any of that? Like
No,
Yeah.
nothing like that. I mean, there had been so much prayer and so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
And, even if there isn't, like if someone dies in a car accident, no one's there reading
Right.
last
True.
rites.
Yeah.
I commit, and in fact, even, God's outside of time, you guys.
okay,
God's outside of time.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about some of those kinds of things. Even when
Right.
David had passed, and even after the memorial service, I have said since then, because God's outside of time, I have said, Lord, I commit my son to your great loving care. I commit David to you. And I am grateful,
Yeah.
grateful beyond measure that I had the privilege and the honor to know him and to be his mom for these 28 years. Because a friend of mine said when her son died 20 years ago, 19 years old in a car wreck, she said, so beautifully spoken, she said, here's the deal. If God had said, Kim, you get to have a son, but the deal is you only get him for 19 years or not at all. And she said, I choose 19 years. I thought that was so profound and brave. And here, do you think, I walked that journey with her, do you think 20 some years later I would be in the same situation? And I have thought of her wise words many times. Here's the deal, Nancy. I'm going to give you an incredible gift, a son. But you only get him for 28 years. It's that or nothing. You don't have to go through that heartbreak. Do you take the 28 years or do you not?
wow,
I take it.
It's
yeah,
the
it's
perspective. It's a whole.
speechless, and
Yeah.
it's just so unthinkable. It's just so unthinkable. I'm just so sorry.
Thank you.
I'm going to shift gears just a little
Yeah,
bit.
please.
I'm going to tell you.
Or, sure. Not please.
Please,
Go ahead.
please
No,
don't make me
I'm
talk.
fine.
But that it's just beautiful to hear how you've handled that. And like my heart is just breaking. But
Are you guys okay? Do we
Yes,
need to take a
yes.
break?
No.
Take a moment. I know.
We both have sons, so
I know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, but it's not about us, obviously.
But it is in a way too, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we're all parents and we're all
We all
people.
can identify.
And we
Oh,
all-
yeah.
Right,
It's
right.
the
Hey,
love you have for your kids.
You bet.
There's just nothing,
No, don't
nothing
need
in
it.
the
Talk
world
about it,
like
right?
that.
Don't take my kid.
It's
from
funny, just as in a quick aside. So for the listeners who don't know, I teach at Westchester University, and I had a bunch of seniors. And at the end of the semester, I just sent them hey, just here's some things to think about as you go out into the world. It was like 5 bullets.
You're so thoughtful, Mark. Yeah.
And the last one didn't even apply to them. It's not even immediately relevant to them. It was play with your kids.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Like
yes.
play with them often, play
Yeah.
with it's inconvenient or it's just painful, because they're going to be the greatest gift you ever get. And then they have to always know that, make sure that they always know it.
It's beautiful.
So that's like,
That's
it
awesome.
fits perfectly. Like you only
Yeah.
can know. My mother said that for years. You don't understand until you have it. You don't understand.
That's right.
I'd be like, Mom, why do you care? Like
Said that
I'm
yesterday.
40 years old, Mom. Like
Yeah.
everything's good. You don't understand.
Yes.
And she
Yeah.
was right.
Yeah.
And she was
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's so
You said
true.
that yesterday.
Yeah. I said it to Sammy yesterday. I'm like,
How old's Sammy?
she's 22, and she just graduated from University of Arizona. And she came home, and you don't want to really be home when you graduated from college.
right.
When you're used to being out in the world or whatever. And I'm a little clingy because I missed her for the last 4 years. So I'm like staring at her and trying to talk to her constantly. And I'm like, you'll understand
Right.
when you have kids yourself. Like the time you spend, the time I get to spend with them now, that they're out of college. Both of my
Right.
kids are out of college, and it just seemed so much of an intensity when they were young.
Yeah.
Like they were always asking for things and doing, and then
Right.
the teenage years, oh my God.
Right.
And then, then they go to college, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait, my son, like I haven't talked.
And then it's by invitation
And
only.
then it's by invitation
when they're
only.
out there in the world,
and
right?
then leave me alone, Mom. I need my space. And so I mean, yeah, it's such a gift. It really is. And sometimes it's crazy, but it's really such a gift. But I just wanted to, this is sort of selfish. Like I wanted to ask about like what you were thinking. We talked briefly about when I was in Dallas. Like so, I told you I was never religious in my life.
Yeah.
But when I was in Dallas, it was the thing. Like the social thing to do was go to church.
Right.
And I moved there from here, and it was very, very different. That Southern, religion is very, very different than here. Here on the East Coast, people are more like, if you want to be religious, be religious. I'm not. It's more like intellectual. And in the South, it's, you're not religious. Are you kidding me? And then Catholicism isn't big there either.
No.
So that was weird. Like people were like, what is this Catholic thing? So it was Baptists, and it was Methodists, and it was Southern Methodist.
Yeah, Protestants.
So the church near us I went to, and all my friends were going. So I'm like, well, let me just check this thing out, And I just sort of like left my mom and my family here for the first time. Like, I'm out of the world. I had little kids.
Yeah.
So I joined this church, and I thought
That was in this area.
That was in Dallas.
Oh, in Dallas.
That was in Dallas when we moved there. And I was like, I need to learn about this because I know nothing. I never really studied the Bible. Like I've just said, this is, not for me.
Right. And the Bible's hard to read, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be hard. Right.
People so there's Bible study, and it was like, once a week. So I went to Bible study, and I had so many questions, and I kept asking these questions like, they believe in the literal translation of the Bible.
Yeah.
So I was asking, like, you really think that locusts, killed all the fields, and that these specific stories actually happened? And the Bible, study instructor would say, absolutely, this happened. And any question I had, she was sort of, it maybe felt to her as disrespectful, but I was coming from a perspective of like, listen, I know nothing about this, and I'm trying to learn, but I'm also questioning the validity of these stories, which don't seem real to me. They seem made up, and maybe parables, and maybe they're symbolic of something I can believe, maybe that, but that this actually really happened the way that they're saying, like the burning bush and maybe it did. I don't know. So eventually I was kicked out of Bible study.
Oh my gosh.
By my Bible study teacher.
See, there you go. I'm
Yes.
like, are you kidding me?
Right.
And then I got
I'm
calls
so
from people in my
sorry.
neighborhood, like, I'm so sorry Christ has not been in your life. And,
I'm sorry.
and the stuff I thought was sort of like, I thought Bible study was kind of like, group therapy where you can't share outside of the circle, but apparently all my stories are being
Everybody
circulated
knew.
around my neighborhood. and then at the same time, like there was a super charismatic pastor at my church. Like, and he was awesome, and he was like real world like stories. So I'm like, I like this. This is really cool. The
At the
music
same
was
church?
cool.
Was it
the same church?
church? Okay.
But I had a question. I was questioning something, and I had sent him an email, and he never responded to me. I was like, oh wow, I thought he really cared about his flock or whatever.
People, yeah.
And then after that, like, I got a couple emails because I was not paying enough money to the church. Like I hadn't put enough. They know how much I made, and I wasn't giving 10%.
Yeah.
So I mean, all these things were happening. So like and obviously it's
Church
different
experience.
everywhere.
Yep.
That's my one church experience. So what do you say to that coming from your perspective? Like, should I try again? Like, or is it, you know what I mean? Like what's...
Yeah. So first thing, I am sorry. And I really mean that, Stacey. You have no idea, as a leader in the church, and I've been a leader since I was a teenager, I can't even begin to tell you how when I hear that,
Right.
it makes me crazy and cringe and feel like, God, I'm so sorry. Gandhi said, the trouble with Christians is they look so unlike their Christ.
Oh my God, what a great quote.
Right? When I hear that, I am so genuinely sorry. I mean that. No perfect churches, right?
Right,
No perfect
right.
church. Because as soon as people arrive, oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
So let's get back. So that's the first thing. And I don't mean that in a trite, so check the box, say that. I mean that from my heart.
Oh, I believe you.
I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah. And I guarantee you as a Bible study teacher would never have kicked me out.
I love teaching Bible. Like, I love it. But let me say this. As far as the Bible goes, can I just put something to
Yes,
rest
please.
for a moment?
Yes, please.
Okay. So when people, politics has gotten so unbelievably ugly in recent decades in America. It's embarrassing. And it has done a terrible disservice to Christianity. Terrible. We've done it. And a lot of times in recent years, especially in America, people are so individualistic, they think I can just read the Bible on my own and I don't have to know anything. I just have to read it and say, thus saith the Lord. And it's like, no, it was always intended to be read in community with people who know more than you do. Just to say, as far as the Bible goes, there are different genres. If you take it all literally, you are missing. So
Right?
it's
Yeah,
incorrect.
I just couldn't
It's
wrap my brain around that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Some things, yeah.
Yeah.
Some things Jesus is saying, no, I'm telling you. In fact, one of the things he says is, I am the resurrection and the life. He says that.
Yeah.
He tells a bunch of hotshot religious leaders, you guys are wrong about the resurrection. There is a resurrection, actually.
Right.
He says that to them. I'm like, yes. And I choose to believe Jesus. I could say, maybe he was
So you
wrong.
believe in that you'll have another life after you die?
I think this life continues, and we
This life
become more
continues.
fully ourselves.
Okay. But we're a spirit. We're not.
We are not a spirit, I believe, through Scripture. We are spirits that happen to have bodies right now, and the Scriptures teach that we will have resurrected bodies that will be fitting for heaven. It will be perfect, and what that looks like, I do not know. But it will be. We will have physical bodies that will be fitting for eternity and for this new world. Now, does that sound totally like what? But that now I'm starting to get
my
too
mind around it.
theological.
I mean,
I
So
know.
we will once
won't
again
be
have physical
disembodied.
so we won't necessarily look like a human being, but
we will have physical form.
you
will
don't
have
know.
physical
Physical
form
form.
according to the Scripture.
Interesting.
But the physical form will be perfected. What does that look like? I don't
Not
know.
necessarily perfected you, but whatever's perfected.
It perfected
means up there.
probably.
Well,
yeah.
the perfected Mark,
up over
the
there.
perfected
Yeah, yeah.
Mark and Stacy and Nancy, that was before we took our first breath on planet Earth.
Why can't we have that while we're alive?
I want it to.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, can't
Because
we?
as soon as we step foot in this world that is just under, I mean, I don't want to get too like weird here.
Well,
but
if you know Buddhism, what they believe, that this
I know
is,
a little
This
bit.
is hell. Life,
Right.
being alive is hell, and you live your entire life to go
trying to get back to.
trying to get back to. They don't call it heaven, but I think it's like
Yeah.
eternity or something.
Yeah,
or,
I used to know that. I do
Yeah.
know the term somewhere out here, but I don't even want to hazard to guess.
Yeah.
But so Christians believe, and again, I know there are different expressions of this. I don't want to say this is what all Christians believe, because again, all these denominations believe that we will have resurrected bodies. We're not just going to be these spirits unembodied.
walking around in a different
No,
plane.
we will have bodies that are fitting for eternity, fitting for purpose. The purpose that you were born, that for which you were born, will be fully realized in this new heavenly realm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you don't think we're going to come back as ants,
No,
or
I mean,
as
I don't
dogs,
believe
or as
that.
cats, or
I don't believe that, but I know, but I have respect for people who do.
Right,
Because I
right.
think, you know what, don't be, I don't want to be trite about what people have invested in and what they have believed.
Right.
According to Scripture, I say, this is what Jesus said. And so all my eggs are in his basket.
Okay.
That's what I say.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so for other people, and he says, I am truth.
right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to continue to spend my life turning toward him who calls himself capital T truth. So that gets really messy, right? In a world of
Does
relativism.
this, like, so as a
Mark's like, I have stuff to say.
no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. But I just
No,
like
no.
I'm sort of I feel, and I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
Skeptical.
Of
like,
course
I feel
you are.
so skeptical.
Me too.
And
Some
and
things.
like so I'm like, but is so, but I don't I absolutely embrace who you are and how you see life.
Yeah.
But in my mind, the way that my brain works,
Yeah.
there's a skepticism there, and I'm just wondering, like, when I hear you say these things, I wonder if, like, Jesus and God in the Bible is really a structure and like a path and a way to keep your life centered I know that's not the way you see it.
I'm listening.
But to me, like, that's when I hear that, I'm like, wow, because it does, right? Because it keeps you from being bad to other people if you believe, and it keeps you, you know what I mean? Like
it's a moral compass.
It's like a moral compass.
Yeah,
That's
my
what I
true
mean.
north. Well, yeah, and I guess everyone, David Foster Wallace, the late David Foster Wallace, who is my son David's, like, one of his favorite authors. His favorite book is Infinite Jest. If your listeners know that book, that's like crazy. He says we all worship. Everyone worships. If you worship your body, right? If you're all about the way you look, you're going to get to the point where you'll be very disappointed. If you worship, worship money, you'll never have enough. If you worship power,
I love that.
He says, we all are worshipers, all of us.
Why not worship something good?
Well, I mean, you have to sort of like, I don't want to just sort of arbitrarily go, I could worship, my son.
Right.
I could worship a plant or a tree. Like, it's been a lot of years of listening and watching and testing and to land where I am. Now, I was born in a Christian family with a father who was abusive, so I could have stitched it all earlier.
You could have. Yeah, it's crazy
yeah, right. So, but for some reason, I also believe that God is the one who draws. Like, if you think about God or have questions about God, God is the one tapping you on the shoulder. You don't choose God. God chooses you. So if you have questions about God, that's God going, hey, have you thought about this? Mm-hmm. God actually is the initiator. So if you ever have a thought about God, he is thinking of you first. I believe that.
Wow.
Because God initiates.
That's
everything. Cool. We do not do the initiating.
So I feel like if that's what my religious upbringing was, I'd still be religious.
Mm. Yeah.
Or I don't want to say those words, but the jading comes with the church, with the mediating institution that now says you must pay X amount, you must tell me your sins, I hold the key to you must behave this way, or I hold the key to your future because I'm in direct contact. This is all stuff I remember from being a child.
It's Catholicism, right?
Yeah, Catholicism. Yeah. So that control, social control, right? I think a lot of people can identify with what you're saying and feel the happiness that you feel. They can imagine themselves, but they were brought up in institutions that pulled that out of them or covered it with heavy blankets of are you kidding me? That doesn't make any sense. My mother just told me a story yesterday where my brother who's older, my sister who's older, were in Blessed Virgin Mary down in Darby, Pennsylvania. We grew up down there, and they were in school when tuitions first started. So they were going for free, first grade to sixth grade. And then at some point, maybe my brother was in fifth or third or something, tuition started, and they got a letter that said, now you need to pay for your school. Fine. I guess it makes sense. My father didn't have an issue with that, but he went down there and said, look, this is a lot for 2 kids. I will pay it, but I get laid off a lot. I'm working 3 jobs. I mean, he's an amazing work ethic. He never wanted anything for free.
Yeah.
He said, I will pay you in installments. And the priest said to him, no, go get a loan. So that changed my mother's perspective, who was very religious. Her mom cooked for the nuns her whole life.
Oh my gosh.
It was a deeply.
Get a loan?
Right.
Not, okay, we'll put you on a payment plan?
And that is in, I don't know when that was, like 19 whatever, that was,
that's
so
a tough
that's
one.
what I'm saying, like that. And that just keeps going and going and going. I wish people felt what you just described. I wish that's all that people felt when they think about it, because that's a wonderful place to be.
That'd be wonderful.
Right?
We'd all be so happy.
Well, and interestingly, I guess 2 thoughts on that. One is that anything that becomes an institution, things become institutions
They're
after
people.
40 years.
It's people.
Whether it's the academy, you mentioned you teach at Westchester University, whether it's the academy, universities, whatever, whether it's business, everything becomes an institution after about 40 years. It's one of those things where I have to say, Jesus came to not start a religion. He never came to start a religion. He simply said, follow me, follow me. And I will lead you home. I will lead you to life. I am life, in fact. Follow me. And then, of course, what do people do? We got to set up a religion. We got to set up, and then it becomes really tainted again. And it's been 2,000 years.
Yeah.
So he's like, the religious leaders were the most oppositional to the ministry of Jesus. It's the religious leaders were the most. In terms of an oppositional agency, it was the religious leaders, who had the most opposition to the ministry of Jesus. It's just what we do.
Yeah, and it seems to me like when you say that, just follow me, like I could see where that could be misinterpreted into some of those cults or into some of those really, that not a side of religion that's like can be dangerous, right? I mean, because I think, and this is not everybody, but there are people who are just so innocent and so. I know I had a friend who like got really far in Scientology, and she was suddenly realized that this is not.
Yes.
This is sick.
Yes.
She would literally say, "No, it was sick."
Yeah.
But if you're in a certain mind frame, and you just want saving.
And we all need to be saved.
Yes.
We all want to be saved, right? And I think when it comes to Jesus, I do say to people, listen, the Bible can be overwhelming if you want to look at Jesus. And I say when things are nuts, go look at Jesus. Just see what he said. Just look at what he said.
Right.
Look at the book, for example, of John's Gospel. Just look at that.
Right.
Take a look. Or Mark, whatever. And see what he said. And just, for yourself. That's not too hard. That's not too hard.
That's great. That's like religion light.
Right. Take a look at that. But in the end, I think that we have made things very complicated, and in the name of religion, and in the name of God, and we have put more barriers to people coming to see life and light and goodness and truth and peace. Are you guys okay? Because I'm like,
no, we're good.
all
This is
heavy
good.
and religion and stuff.
No, it's good. Yeah, we can switch gears from
Whatever
religion,
you
but
want.
religion's you. So I mean,
It is
how
me.
can you get away from
know, right?
discussing that?
Thank you.
And I love it. This has
Thank
been a
you.
fantastic
As
conversation
long as
so
it fits
far.
who
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
are in your audience.
Yeah.
You are focused on empowering women.
Yes.
Give me the message for today's, not women, but today's teens, 18, 20 years old, Stacy's daughter getting out of college.
Oh.
What's the message to empower them? The best advice you could give them.
I'm thinking of one of my keynote talks. It's so very important. I will say this. Step into who you really and truly are. That takes work. To know who you
To
are.
know who you are, especially young.
Especially when you're young. Where you are today, whether you're 8, whether you're 18, whether you're 98, step into who you know you are right in front of the world. Small, large, in private, in public. Be who you are.
Wow.
Be
Love
who
this.
you are. And let the chips fall where they may. Now, I'm not saying that without wisdom, just be who you are and lack wisdom, right? Imagine,
Be you. You be you.
Imagine me
that's
on
the saying.
TV with QVC and going, Jesus saves, and if you don't come to Jesus, you're fired. Out you go.
It might.
I have to be who I am.
Might be controversial.
Right.
little
You have
bit.
to be who you are and be appropriate in
Right.
different
Well, you
settings.
might sell more on Q.
Yeah, right. But I really do. Being who, if you really know who you are, and I would argue, the more you know who's God, the more you know God, the real God, the more you will know yourself. The more you know your true self, the more you will know God. Be who you are, young woman, 98-year-old woman. Then you don't try so hard. You just are right in front of people, and let people.
That's
just
excellent
absorb
advice.
what that is.
Excellent.
Tell my son that.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I think that's good for men or women.
Yeah.
All right. So let me do lightning round first.
Okay.
So, okay. What is a skill that you wish you had?
Oh, well, what is a skill? I wish I could speak other languages fluently.
Yeah, me too. I want to speak
Communicate.
Italian.
Oh, me too.
We had Maddie here in the podcast, and
So beautiful.
she's not teaching Italian anymore. So,
Yeah, I
Madeline.
like that.
And why do you wish you could speak other languages?
I think just because I studied romantic languages when I got my first degree in voice performance. So I studied the romantic languages. I can read them beautifully. I'm taking New Testament Greek right now. I love languages, but I can't converse. I
Wow.
can read it. I can sing it beautifully. And people go, oh, what a beautiful accent. What a beautiful, impeccable diction. But I can't literally understand until I have to do the word for word translation. It's a lot of work.
Have you tried it with a glass of wine? Because that really helps.
Actually, yes, I have.
You get a lot more verbal when you've had a couple glasses of
Oh,
wine.
no, this I know. This I know. Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what you say. Do
It sounds beautiful.
you have any pets?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about them.
Oh, my gosh. I have this incredible puppy. She's 1.5 years named Nala. and she is a Bouvier, a dog.
Now,
Yeah.
so what would she say about you?
Oh, she would say, "You
great question.
are." She'd say, "What a sad woman."
Oh,
Because we got her during our time of grief. She looks at me with these big brown eyes. She is stunning. She is so loving, but she's very dignified. So I sometimes, when I've been crying, I feel I have said to Nala, this incredible dog, I've said, Nala, I know you haven't even known me outside of grief.
Right.
yeah.
So I think she would say, this woman is sad, but she's also pretty amazing. I love her so much because
great
I'm
answer.
very loving with her.
Yeah.
Genuine
And
answer.
yeah, Nala means strong female.
Yes.
Queen. And water in the desert in another language. So I'm like, I love my Nala. I love that dog.
Sweet or salty?
Ooh, salty.
What are you? Sweet or salty?
Sweet. Oh, please.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Salty for
Junk
me.
food, junk
I like
food.
them both together.
No,
Have you ever had
that's good.
popcorn with
Yes.
little chocolates in there?
Very good.
Like, oh,
Yeah, but I'm
favorite.
going to reach
Junkie.
for chips. I like chips.
What's something about you no one knows?
No one?
No one.
No one
No
knows?
one. I mean, maybe your husband.
Until you say it right here.
Yeah, we want to break something
Maybe your
here on the Gurus and
No,
Game
not
Changer
even your
podcast.
husband.
Hold on, not even my husband. Oh gosh, what's something about me no one knows? That's a tough one because I'm really an open.
You're very
book.
open.
I am so open.
There is something, I know it.
Okay.
You don't share very often.
Okay.
From your
Okay.
past,
We can
some
cut it if you change your mind.
Dark
No,
secret.
no, it's
No
okay.
cutting.
Ooh, dark. Well, I will say, and actually, I shared this, and I'm.
So people know this.
Well, then I shouldn't say it. 'Cause
No, that's
one
okay. That's
knows.
okay. Because maybe you can give us like more.
No one knows. Okay, I like. Oh gosh, what am I going to say?
Wait, what were you about to say?
I was going to say, remember at QVC when we had, you wanted to get to know the proprietary guests.
Okay.
And you had us write some stuff and you had me go first.
I don't remember. but
You don't
go ahead.
remember? And
No.
I shared about how when I was in second grade, I was a bully.
I love that.
Do you remember that about me?
No, but I
you
could
were
see
like,
it. I could see
can't-
it.
What do you mean you can see it? What?
I'm
no,
just kidding.
Mark.
what you were like, you're kidding me because
Yeah.
I.
Oh, I do remember.
It's not something I share much.
Yeah.
But I was a really hurting little girl. My dad had left and I was kind of a bully for a year. And I didn't know which end was up. And it was only for that year. And I've called people or tried to reach out to just a couple people that I had been mean to.
Oh, about it.
And
Yeah.
tried to reach out to them to say, I'm so very, very sorry. But anyway,
We're all.
That's awesome.
when
well,
we're
that's
young.
something
I
people
mean,
wouldn't even believe about me.
Yeah.
They're like, you were a bully.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really the opposite of who I
right.
think you. Oh yeah.
I know. So there you go. Dark side.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
No. Well,
Do you believe in ghosts?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Wait.
Spirit world.
Okay.
Well, have I ever seen a ghost? I don't know. I mean, I had this experience when I was a little girl once where I thought I saw Jesus, but I don't. And I was like so excited. I said to my mom, I saw Jesus. I said, I don't know if
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
did or didn't. And so I guess I should, but is that a ghost as a definition? I don't know. So I would say no, probably not.
Okay. Last question.
Okay. I'm not very fun in these because I get too in my head.
Right.
What is on your bedside table right now?
Ooh, oh my gosh. The book by Becker called Denial of Death.
Ooh.
A Joe Malone candle. And my mouth guard. I grind my teeth.
Look inside. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so that's the truth.
That is awesome. So Nancy, tell us how we can get in touch with you, like what you're trying to sort of bring to the world right now, and anything else that you think that our audience and our listeners, if they're intrigued and they want to meet you and learn from you, how can they find you?
Well, I will say that in our ministry since COVID and since David has passed, we've gotten very, very, we've distilled the ministry down to really being particular about media work for me, whether it's radio, television, podcasts, I love. And so hence I'm back with QVC doing the faith category, and speaking, live speaking. I love it. I just love it. And professional speaking. So nancyhickslive.com is my
Okay.
website, and on social media, Facebook or Instagram, Nancy Hicks Live are the handles. So I would love to come and speak if there's anything that that people are doing, especially about women, raising up women. But I speak to men too, But everything's on my website. There are free resources, grief resources, but everything. I unapologetically I do say it's a Christian faith-based ministry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Oh, this has been
I'd love to connect.
Awesome.
amazing. Like I could probably talk to you for another like 2 hours.
I know.
Thank you.
I
We'll
don't know if
stop
our
recording and
I don't
keep
know if our
talking.
listeners will listen for 2 hours.
But yeah, we definitely want to thank you, and we'll dedicate it to your son. To your
Yeah.
son, to your son's memory, and
you.
to finish with his statement, which is stuck in my head now, that I don't think I'm going to forget it. You've heard everything that Nancy said. How can you interpret it? How can you put it to use in your life, to our listeners? So basically, what's your move?
What's your
What's your move?
And I absolutely love that. But thank you.
love
Thank you
it.
so much for
Thanks,
sharing.
Nancy.
Oh, thank you for having me, both of you.
genuine.
Appreciate it.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you once again. Hey, we'd love to hear comments on what you heard. There's a lot put out here that I know a lot of you probably have a lot of thoughts on. So we would love to hear what you have to say.
Bring it.
And bring it on.